However, the conceptual shift is a problem. The fact that the instructor isn't giving you all the answers is a problem. The fact that the course is spread all over the internet is a problem. And so the challenge we found was individuals changing their perception about what a course was, and for that matter, what knowledge is. Because I would argue that in a regular course, we do not necessarily have knowledge being exchanged. We have people memorizing things. And that doesn't necessarily equate to knowledge. An example that I've frequently used is called the private universe. And this came out of a study that was done at Harvard. And it is online. If you search private universe, there's a series of video documentaries. But basically, they approach an opening graduate scene at Harvard. And they ask these students, why do we have season changes? And an overwhelming amount of the students, the vast majority, were not able to explain why seasons change. The tilt of the axis is the right answer, but they were saying all kinds of very odd things. So how can a group of students at an elite university, probably the most elite university in the world, make it through an entire program, get their degree, and not be able to explain what I think somebody in grade 3 should know? And I think the primary reason is that our school is good at pushing information out. Our school system, even universities, are good at pushing information out. They're not that good at getting people to dialogue about information. They're not as effective at getting people to interrogate information and to create and build on each other's ideas. It's changing in some settings, but still largely focused on what the educator knows is what you have to know when the course is done. And that's how we'll assign a grade based on how well we think you managed to map the educator's knowledge. So a traditional course, needless to say, doesn't necessarily provide individual students with a greater depth of understanding. Partly because people learn to play the game of a course, right? I mean, if you look at your students, what's the first question they ask? What are the readings? When are the assignments due? If you say, oh, this is a really good book, they'll say, is this going to be on the test? Is this an important idea? They're not necessarily there to learn about the course. They're there to make sure, are we playing the game the way you've designed the game of teaching and of learning? And I mean, that's typical. I think it makes sense. It means that the students are intelligent because they don't want to waste time doing stuff that isn't going to be recognized. But it speaks to a weakness of the system of learning as a whole, where students are aware and able to play and begin to work the system rather than begin to grow in their knowledge and contribute to knowledge development. Okay, right now we're doing a course with Stephen Downs, Dave Cormier, and Rita Kopp and I are doing a course called Personal Learning Environments, Networks, and Knowledge. We've evolved the general outline a fair bit since we started the first course. This is, I think, the 4th open course we've done now. We have less students in this one. We have about 1,600 students involved. And the model, as you can see, is quite similar to the layout we had previous. But one of the things we've done is we've gotten much better at using technology to help people make sense of subject area. So for example, I'll give you an issue of the Daily. Let me just pull one out from yesterday. The Daily is a daily newsletter, surprise, that we send out to individual students within a course. And this is what you would get. Every day, some of it's automated, some of it isn't. It's built on, Stephen Downs contributed the code to it. So in this case, you'll get every morning an email that looks something like this. It'll give you any readings that were assigned at the start of the week. Then there's any facilitator post. There's 4 facilitators in this course, so any posts that they've made will be posted here. Then there's discussion threads. These are pulled directly out of Moodle. And then there's any comments from participant blogs. So people register their blog in the course, and once they've registered their blog, each time they use the tag Plank 2010, it'll pull it into this particular email. If they don't use the tag and they blog, it's not going to appear in here. They have to use the tag on it. So these are, as you can see, participant blog comments that people who've decided they didn't want to post in the discussion forum, but instead they wanted to post on their own space, which makes sense. So that's what it looks like. And so those are discussion posts, and then we also pull in any Twitter posts that are Twitter feeds that have been tagged with Planck 2010, which is the course tag, and again, that's what you look at. Now, this is an email that students receive on a daily basis. There's always, the archive is available for individuals to access down the road. So there's two things that are happening here, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail tomorrow, but I just want to touch on it here. There isn't a lot of coherence here. It's very fragmented. Conversations are really all over the map. People are saying a lot of different things. Some people are challenging this. Some people are taking a conversation into their own direction. Some people are basically trying to figure out what is it that you guys are talking about. Other people are contributing and adding to it. And in some cases, there's a high level of dialogue. But if you just quickly skim through here, one of the things you have is a very fragmented global course. New Jersey, Ireland, Romania, Portugal, Finland, Romania, New Mexico, Denmark, Portugal, Brazil, Ireland, Malaysia, Germany, Spain, US, Hungary, UK, Edinburgh, Belgium, and the list goes on. But if you just run through, these are the locations of people who are involved. So I think in that regard, it's the diversity to a degree that is equally critical in the course as well. Because what you're getting is not just the content, but you're getting a I know Alfredo was there. Yeah, he's there. Antonio. Yeah, see? It can't be a good open course if you don't have people from Puerto Rico, can it? But anyway, what I'm trying to communicate is it's a global course, right? It's one of the first things that you see with an open course is that it blurs a lot of boundaries. It blurs walls. In a classroom, it blurs roles between teacher and educator. It blurs distinctions between, am I from Puerto Rico or Canada? You're interacting with people who are bringing very different perspectives to the table. So the first key element here is diversity, right? You have opinions and views expressed here that are not confined to, George thinks this, or Stephen or David think that, and Rita think. You have a very different kind of a model of interaction. The problem is, it's chaotic. The benefit is it's great for creativity and random collisions of ideas. And it's really a sacrifice. On the one hand, you cope with the chaos in order to get the benefit of the creativity. And so one of the challenges that arises is when you have a fragmentary interaction of the nature that are presented here, you end up with individuals who feel lost and who feel confused. So you need ways to stitch that back together. You need to form what I would call a narrative of coherence. You need a coherent knowledge structure. Now, there's different ways that you do this. I'll explain how we try to do it with a course, but certainly these aren't the exclusive ways. Now, one of the things I ask students to do in a course is always create a concept map. And concept map basically is them demonstrating, this is how I see these pieces fitting together, right? So what is a learning management system? What is Twitter? What role does Facebook play in this? So it's really just these different tools and technologies, and the individuals splice them together and communicate to me what they think or understand about a course. The concepts within a course. The second thing they do in order to make sense of the subject is they interact with others. And this is the notion of social sense making. We make sense of topics by talking about it. What happens with an election, for example, or when there's a big issue in Puerto Rico or a big issue in Canada? What's the first thing people do? They talk, right? They interact. They have opinions. They share views. They debate. They argue. We see it on TV. And that's how they gain an understanding of a particular topic, is through discourse. Put another way, that's how they weave a coherent knowledge structure, knowledge framework, rather than keeping, because you can't really decide an act if it's fragmentary. You need to pull the pieces together in a meaningful way. So that's one way. You make sense socially. Another way is this concept of, literally wayfinding. Dar can use it as the focus on his PhD dissertation, and his emphasis was, much like people, he was looking at video games, but he said people enter these confusing video games environment, and they begin to find their way through the system by the cues that the designer has left. So the person who designs puts things in place like, this is, if you played good old Nintendo 64 and you're on Mario Brothers and you get to the edge of the screen and you can't go any further and Mario just stands in place, you got to turn around and go another direction. That's sort of a wayfinding cue. In a similar sense, within the course, such as this, there's a series of wayfinding cues that we've put into place. For example, the daily is a wayfinding cue. It's information that we provide on a daily basis on where we're at in the course. We don't expect everyone to read it all, but at least it's there for those that have time. The discussion forum, the wiki, which lists, our readings that we have each week and the different topics. Like we were looking at the extended web, and so there's readings and resources that have been posted on this that they can access through here. So it's not that we just say to students, go out and learn without any objective or without any target. There is an objective, there is a target, there is a goal. But the distinction is, rather than telling students what to do in terms of learning, we're trying to design the system in which the learning happens. We're trying to change the model so that the random connections and the serendipity that students require for learning aren't severed by rigid design on our part as educators before the course begins. So a few things out of that in terms of a design perspective. First of all, the student needs, I think, in many instances of open courses at least, a framework that recognizes I can't achieve this on my own. I won't be able to make sense of this on my own. I need to rely on social systems. I need to participate in order to make sense of subject areas. Students also, and I'll get into this in quite a bit more detail tomorrow, but students need to create. You have to create something in my eyes, because the only way you're going to begin to pull these fragmented pieces together is if you're creating something. You might be a concept map, you might create a blog post, you might create a video, but it doesn't matter. The important thing is you're creating something where you're trying to communicate to others. Because if you are in a position where you can teach, what you're really doing is learning it from a different perspective. And so there's a lot of value in a student, and this is often if you're doing a course, an interactive course, where you, or based on a participatory pedagogical model, where you ask students to research a topic area, pull together a presentation, and present it to other students. That's an incredibly valuable learning experience because the act of creation forces individuals to select which pieces belong and which pieces don't belong. What do I want to include, what's important, what's consequential, and what isn't. So I think from a design perspective, rather than saying, especially in a learning design mindset, rather than saying these are the things that a student has to learn, we set a general framework that says these are concepts that are important. People who are well informed in this field will have these and these perspectives on a topic. Or maybe not perspectives, but they'll have these and they'll have an understanding of these and these elements. Their perspective on it may be different than my own, but nonetheless, these elements will be somewhere in their knowledge structure. So when you're an educator in this kind of a setting, you participate by helping students work through those areas. If there's key areas that are being missed, you drop in and share a resource. If there's misinformation being shared in a network, you pop in and you provide your perspective, your opinion on it. In a lot of cases, students will do the self-correction for you, though. Right? I mean, students are very adept. If they are somewhat familiar with the subject area, they will be very adept at being able to respond to and address some of those key questions that that others are putting out or that are sources of misinformation.